G'day, I so often get asked, why don't you do a quiz? So today, I'm doing a quiz to test your knowledge about Formula One. A whole host of questions ranging from very easy to very tricky. You'll need a pen and a piece of paper or perhaps a laptop or somewhere to note down your answers because at the end, I'll be telling you what the correct answers were. So if you're ready, let's get started in 8 seconds time. We have a lot of questions to get through, and don't be frightened to hit the pause button in between questions so that you've got time to write your answer down. I'm kicking it off now with question number 1. Which F1 driver races under the number 3? Who did Haas driver Kevin Magnussen replace at the start of 2022? What track was this image taken at? Do you know how many teams this F1 driver has driven for? If you do, write the answer down and we'll come back and compare notes at the end. This year we've seen young Williams driver Alex Albon with red hair. But which race did he first come in wearing the dyed hairstyle? Do you recognise this fellow? This is Richard Mille, the watchmaker. His company has sponsored F1 for a while now. But how many teams does he sponsor in 2022? I often catch Seb running back down pit lane on his way back to the grid for the national anthem. Do you recognise which pit lane he's running down here? This is a two-part question, so you get 0.5 of a mark for each correct answer. Who is this female presenter and which TV network does she work for? Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc has won 4 races, but do you remember where he won his first race? I do. I was there to photograph it. I'm recording this video on the 7th of June 2022, so bear that in mind when you answer your questions. I can tell you that the last race I was at was Monaco, and I shot this picture here. But do you know what turn is this on the Monaco track? I love this fella, I see him at every single race. Do you recognise him? If so, write down his name. What year did Lance Stroll score his first F1 podium? This is 7-time World Drivers' Champion Lewis Hamilton. I photographed him celebrating his World Drivers' Championships at a number of tracks. But at what race in 2019 was he celebrating his 6th World Drivers' Championship? Here's a fellow who's unfortunately no longer with us, and I snapped this picture at the Canadian Grand Prix back in 2017. My question for you, though, is in what year did he win his first World Drivers' Championship? Here's George Russell sporting some nice sunnies. In fact, this particular brand of sunglasses is a sponsor of Mercedes. Do you know which company it is? I shot this picture in 2019. It was after the race. Daniel came up to Daniil Kvyat and apologised to him for something that had happened in that race. But do you remember which race it was? DRS. Do you know what that stands for? If you do, write that down on your list and we'll come back and see if you're right at the end of this video. Question number 18. How many of the F1 drivers are fathers? Are you a fan of Sir Lewis Hamilton? If you are, you probably know what year he was knighted. If you do, write that down. And if you don't, just have a guess. Here is a much-loved man in the paddock, Jackie Stewart. He's 82 years of age and he still works his backside off taking tours throughout the paddock. My question, though, is what year was his last year driving in Formula One? This will prove tricky for some of you and easy for others, but can you identify the track from just this piece of curbing and the grassed hill in the background? F1 is all about speed, but can you tell me the slowest corner across all of the 2022 circuits? Do you recognise this track? It is the longest track that we race at in 2022. It measures just over 7 kilometres. Which track is this? The Monaco Grand Prix sees the field doing 78 laps unless it's time affected. The second highest number of laps is 72, but at what track? We're 24 questions down. Here's number 25. One of these men is an ex-Formula One driver. The other is a father of a current F1 driver. But which driver? Out of all of the F1 drivers this year, only 4 have won World Drivers' Championships. But how many in total have those 4 drivers won? Can you identify this team principal? It's a male. Doesn't help you much, does it? But anyway, I'm interested in your thoughts. Write it down because we're going to come back at the end of this video and run through the answers to every single question. Who is the oldest driver in the current field of 20 drivers? Mexican driver Sergio Perez has won 3 F1 races. Remember, this is at the 7th of June 2022. His first win came in 2020, but at which race? COVID's been a fair interruption to our sport, hasn't it? While a number of drivers have contracted the virus, how many have actually missed races due to it? Last year's final race in Abu Dhabi was absolutely epic. Lewis Hamilton getting pipped by Max Verstappen. But what was the points difference after that race between Max and the runner-up Lewis? I remember this race day quite vividly. But do you? Can you tell me at which track and in what year this event took place? This young Australian driver certainly deserves a drive in Formula One, but at the moment he's a reserve driver. But do you know for which team? We're up to question 34, and hopefully you've done pretty well. Lewis Hamilton, the fashion icon, has worn some interesting outfits. This one, I think, is the most, what's the word, adventurous? But at which race did he wear it in 2021? If you've watched F1 for a while, you probably would have seen a blue flag being waved by a marshal. But what does it mean? I've blacked out the logo on the back of this car, but for all of this season, you would have seen it if you were watching. What is the logo that I've blacked out? Early on, I asked you to write down the name of the oldest F1 driver. Now I'm asking you to name the youngest in the field of 20. Every F1 driver gets to choose the number that they race under, and they pick their numbers for a variety of reasons. Who is racing under the number 31? Every F1 driver has a trainer or a physio. Some have more than one, but there is only one female amongst that group, and this is her. Jot down her name. Earlier this year, Pierre Gasly held off Lewis Hamilton for most of the race. It was a memorable battle. But can you identify the race? And a reminder too, if you like this picture, note that Pierre Gasly has hand-signed 100 copies of it. You can actually purchase one, framed, sent to almost anywhere in the world by heading to kimillman.com and looking for the Pierre Gasly signed print. Hopefully there's still some left by the time you get there. And one bonus question, who is your favourite driver? Jot that down. That's it. We're done. How did you go? Have you still got some holes in your answer sheet there? If so, hit the pause button in a second and fill in those holes, and I'll come back in a second and tell you what the correct answers were. Here are the answers. Daniel Ricciardo races under the number 3. Who did Kevin Magnussen replace at the start of 2022? Nikita Mazepin. Which track was this photo taken at? Bahrain. How many F1 teams has this driver driven for? It's Nico Hülkenberg, and he's driven for 7. What race of 2022 did Alex Albon debut his red hairstyle? It was Australia. How many F1 teams do Richard Mille sponsor in 2022? 2, Ferrari and McLaren. Do you recognise which pit lane he's running down here? Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. This is Federica Mazzolin. She works for Sky Italia. Charles Leclerc won his first F1 race in Spa. What corner of the Monaco GP circuit is this? Turn number 10. This is Ted Kravitz from Sky Sports. Lance Stroll scored his first podium in Baku in 2017. Lewis Hamilton won his 6th World Drivers' Championship and celebrated in Austin. This is Niki Lauda, and he won his first World Drivers' Championship with Ferrari in 1975. George Russell wears police sunglasses. Daniel Ricciardo apologised to Daniil Kvyat in Azerbaijan 2019. The letters DRS stands for Drag Reduction System. How many of this year's F1 drivers are fathers? 3. Sergio Perez, Kevin Magnussen and Sebastian Vettel. What year was Lewis Hamilton knighted? 2020. What was Jackie Stewart's final year as an F1 driver? 1973. This picture was taken at Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. The slowest corner in F1 is the hairpin in Monaco. What is the longest F1 track this year? Spa. The race with the second highest number of laps involved is Zandvoort in the Netherlands. The man on the right here is Mario Andretti, and on the left is Daniel Ricciardo's dad, Joe Ricciardo. The total number of World Drivers' Championships held between the current 2022 F1 drivers is 14. Did you pick this team principal? It was Jost Capito. The oldest driver in F1 this year, Fernando Alonso. Sergio Perez won his first race with Red Bull in Baku, and 4 drivers have missed a race or more due to COVID. The point difference between Max and Lewis at the end of last year was 8. What race did this event take place at? It was Imola 2021. Oscar Piastri is the reserve driver for Alpine. Lewis Hamilton wore this outfit in 2021 at the Turkish GP. And the blue flag, what does that mean? It means lap cars must yield to faster cars. What logo has been on the back of this car this season? Alpine. Who's the youngest F1 driver in 2022? Yuki Tsunoda. Which driver races under the number 31? Esteban Ocon. And the only female trainer in the group is Angela Cullen. And at what track did I take this picture of Pierre Gasly this year? It was Imola. How did you go? I'm interested to see your scores and I'd love you to write them in the comments below, providing you haven't cheated. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so. Know that becoming a member gets you a whole host of extras. Plus, if you're looking for my digital images, head over to prostarpics.com. I put up about 1,800 images every single race. You'll find F1 driver books, wall art, merchandise, and those Pierre Gasly prints, if there's any left, at kimillman.com. And for my best pics live from the track and all during the week, I invite you to go search Instagram at kimillman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. Correct answers were.
There'll be 40 questions.
No, I don't think I should even say that. I'll just have that in the title.